Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our first ever Virtual LOFT workshop series focused on hacking a career during and after COVID-19. Before we get started, I would like to go over a couple housekeeping rules to keep the workshops as smooth as possible. We have an industry expert joining us today that will share her expertise in online networking and mentoring. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type them under the Q&A window icon found at the bottom. Feel free to share any comments under the chat icon and make sure it's set for both panelists and attendees. That way everyone can view it and join the conversation. For those of you just joining, we went over the housekeeping rules and I will make sure to add them under the comment section for your review. Now let's get started. This is our first ever series and it's a 3-part virtual law series that will take place over the next few days. We have put together a great lineup of speakers that will offer insights and tips on how to navigate today's workforce during COVID-19. Now more than ever, we need to work together as a community and help one another to know of anyone that can benefit from this insight. Please share it and also feel free to invite any of your friends and family to join in the next few days. There will be companies that are looking to hire on the line and eager to hear from you if you're looking for a job that aligns with your needs. We will kick off the series with today's workshop on online networking and mentoring. Tomorrow, we will focus on resume and interview prep, and we will conclude on Thursday with a virtual job board. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the workshop. Please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A window. Kicking us off, we have Bari Lemberger, who is a senior manager on the social impact team at LinkedIn, which is focused on connecting job seekers facing barriers to the resources and networks needed to build meaningful careers. In this role, Bari leads marketing across all social impact initiatives and partners with cross-functional teams to inspire LinkedIn's 690 million plus members to do good. Thank you for joining us, Bari.
Thanks, Jessica. I'll go ahead and jump right in. So as Jessica mentioned, I am on the social impact team at LinkedIn. I'm based in New York, so love seeing in the chat that there is some New York representation on the call. And I'm really excited to share more about how you can use LinkedIn to develop your personal brand and show up well as a job candidate on the platform, and also develop relationships to broaden your professional network and potentially even find mentors. And I'm going to keep the conversation really broad today. I know some folks on the line might be students, some people might be later in their career looking for a new opportunity or to re-enter the workforce after some time away. Feel free to get more specifics in the Q&A section and we can dig into your specific situation down the road or catch up after the webinar. But I'm going to keep this broadly focused on anyone looking to further develop their career or look for a new job, especially during these challenging times. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to get started. All right. Can you all see it now? Hold on, I want to make sure I'm not in.
Yes, we're good, Bari.
We're good, Jessica. Okay, thanks. All right. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about how you can think about building your network and advancing your career online using LinkedIn. And this is a part of a program called LinkedIn Coaches that my team runs at LinkedIn. It involves specifically working to support job seekers who may be looking for their next opportunity or maybe facing barriers as they think about accessing the job market. So what we're going to cover today is a really high-level introduction to LinkedIn. So this might be a review for some of you. Feel free to tune out for 2 slides and then check back in. Then we're going to talk about building your LinkedIn profile, using your profile to show up well on LinkedIn and build your professional network, and how you can use that network to find jobs, internships, build relationships. And then, of course, even though this session is focused on finding a professional network and a set of mentors, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about how you actually search for jobs on LinkedIn. So I'm planning to dig into that as well. And finally, we'll talk about some extra credit you can do on LinkedIn to join groups, find alumni of your school, or any programs that you've been a part of. So what is LinkedIn? First, I'll start with what you do on other social media sites, because LinkedIn is a social media site, but it's just a little different. So on Facebook, you might be talking about what you like to do. I don't know if any of you remember the days when you might like a band or like an activity on Facebook. Now I know a lot more people are on Snapchat and Instagram. So on Snapchat, you might film yourself eating a donut, or on Instagram, you might take a cool photo of a donut and add a filter. But when it comes to LinkedIn, though it's a social network, everything's going to have a professional lens. So you can still talk about donuts, but you want it to all be related to the world of work. So maybe you're saying, I want to open a donut business one day, or I want to find a job at a donut company. I have experience making donuts and marketing donuts. My top skills are in donut sales. And here's some recommendations from people in my donut making network. So kind of a ridiculous example, I know. Most of you are probably not donut experts, but just to illustrate how everything that happens on LinkedIn is really supposed to be related to the world of work and your professional identity. So you're not going to post the same stuff on Instagram that you would post on LinkedIn. Now, what actually happens on this professional network? So there are over 50 million businesses on LinkedIn with millions of open job opportunities. When we think about, let's say, the top 100 companies in the US, over 95% of them are using LinkedIn to find talent. So their recruiters are paying for special access to LinkedIn so they can sit and find people to fill their jobs every single day. We now have almost 700 million professionals in over 200 countries. We get 2 new members every second, which is pretty hard to believe. And there are a ton of groups on LinkedIn, almost 3 million, as people are finding their communities. So it's not necessarily just a place to create a profile and search for jobs on your own, but you can actually now join groups with people who have similar backgrounds or similar interests. And we'll actually talk about relevant groups to all of you at the end of this presentation. But you can interact with those communities and also interact with your feed in the same way you would interact with a Facebook feed or an Instagram feed. As I mentioned, recruiters are literally on LinkedIn all day. And overall, not even just thinking about the big companies, 9 out of 10 employers use LinkedIn during the hiring process. So they're either finding people they want to hire and reaching out proactively, or they get your application and they're immediately looking you up on LinkedIn to see what you look like online. So it's not a great look if you send in a good resume, but then they look you up on LinkedIn and the profile is outdated. It's not a good representation of who you are and what you can bring to their business. So that's why we're going to talk about the importance of setting up a great LinkedIn profile. Obviously, if you don't have an account, that's the first thing to do. So we have a great mobile app that you can do all of this on, or you can use your desktop and go to linkedin.com. And I want to take a step back before we dig into the details of the LinkedIn profile and talk about the differences between a LinkedIn profile and a resume. Now, some people think it's the same thing, like they're just copying and pasting the bullet points from their resume onto their LinkedIn profile. You can do that in some cases, but your LinkedIn profile actually has a lot more potential than just a one-page sheet of paper. So your LinkedIn profile is going to speak to all employers. So you're not going to have one resume for donut making and one resume for cupcake making, or one resume for marketing and one resume for sales jobs. With LinkedIn, you have one profile that everyone can see. And you can also go into much more detail and change it every day. So if you just finished an online course, you can add that. If you completed a project and it's in PowerPoint format or PDF format, or you're a designer and you have a new illustration you want to show, you can upload that, and we call that rich media. And that's what really brings your profile to life. And you can basically add as much content as you want to the profile so that you really come off the page and you're more of a person and not just a sheet of paper. Also, LinkedIn is obviously interactive and it can contain recommendations and endorsements. So some of you may have seen this on your profile. And for some people, if they don't take it super seriously, so they've gotten a bad rap in the past, but you can be endorsed for skills and some of them are really meaningful. Like I can endorse someone for marketing experience if I worked with a marketing program, with them on a marketing program in the past, or I can actually write them a recommendation. So unlike a resume, which only has a list of experience, nothing else from anyone else, LinkedIn is more of a representation of what people think about you. Now, what comes up first when you're looking at a LinkedIn profile is the ask to take a great photo, which is really intimidating for people. I get it. But the reality is that members of profile photos receive up to 21 times more views and 9 times more connection requests. So it's important that you add a profile photo you're comfortable with and that it reflects a professional version of yourself. Again, not necessarily the same photos you're putting on Snapchat. So you should dress for the job you want. These days, I know a lot of us are like in pajamas all day, which I totally understand, but I put on a normal shirt for this presentation. So this is the type of thing I would wear for my LinkedIn profile. And you shouldn't have other people in it. Like all my photos on Instagram are with my dog, but my dog shouldn't be on LinkedIn and other people shouldn't be in my LinkedIn profile photo because you want it to be clear who you are. Now, one question we often get is, whether people are discriminating on LinkedIn when they're looking at people's profiles. And I want to acknowledge that that's a real concern because we know there's a lot of unconscious and conscious bias when it comes to hiring. And especially older job seekers feel that they're a little, discouraged for putting their profile up on their LinkedIn profile for that reason. But the reality is that people are going to question if you have a profile without a photo. And so it's really up to your personal level of comfort. What we can offer is just that we know people are getting more views if they have photos, and people are more likely to reach out if they have photos. So we can certainly, dig into this later if anyone has questions on it. But I do want to acknowledge it's a real concern and just share what LinkedIn's perspective is on the situation. So then you get into the meat of your profile, which is essentially your story. What is the experience you're bringing to the table? What are your hopes and dreams when it comes to your career? So when you start editing your profile, there's a ton of sections, and I recommend either setting up a big block of time to work on your profile or setting a goal every day of taking 30 minutes to do each part, since they can take a fair amount of time. You're going to add your location and your industry. Now, if you want to get into a new industry or you're a student and you're not in an industry yet, you can put in your new desired industry. That's fine. You're going to add your work and your internship experience and also your volunteer experience. So we found that 40% of hiring managers believe that volunteer experience is just as important as paid work experience. So you might feel like you don't have a ton of work experience, but if you've, volunteered at your church or a local youth group, or you've babysat for people in your family, those are experiences that have given you skills that could actually help you get a job. So we recommend adding experience under the volunteer section if you have that. Then you can add your education section and any certifications you have, as well as the skills you've acquired and any programs or organizations that you've been a part of. The headline is that line that shows up on your profile right under your profile photo. And this can be intimidating, but I would just encourage you to do some reflection before deciding to make it really straightforward. So you could say student at San Jose State University, but if I want to hire you or if thinking about hiring you, that doesn't really tell me that much about you. So what can I share that's more unique about me? Well, maybe I'm a student, but I'm also an aspiring marketing professional in tech. So then you could say recent graduate or San Jose State student and then you can have a line, as you see some of these folks do, curriculum designer, facilitator. And after that line, you can say aspiring tech marketing professional. Or as you can see, some people are, listing some of their skills. So revenue, partnership, marketing, and development executive. And some people are getting even more creative. So this colleague of mine who works at LinkedIn says empowering the global workforce at LinkedIn. So to be honest, as a recruiter, I would have no idea what that means. But I know right now he's not looking for a job. He recently started at LinkedIn, so he's probably not too concerned about that. And he's just excited about what he's currently working on and wants to be creative and sharing that vision. But it's important to do a little bit of reflection, because what it's going to auto-populate to is the boring, like marketing at Hispanic Heritage Foundation. And, while that's totally fine, it's a fact, you could get a little bit more creative and say, connecting the Latinx community to opportunity or something like that. So people have a better idea of what you're all about. The other intimidating part of your profile that a lot of people just leave blank is the summary section. So this is that open box where you can write whatever you want. And it's really the best place for you to communicate more about who you are and the type of personality that you would bring to any team. So this is a good example, and we're going to send out these slides later so you can, maybe not copy and paste, but get inspired by some of the examples here. But I think a solid formula is to start with 1 to 2 sentences about who you are, and then talk about what your experience has been and what the skills and passions are that you've developed through that experience. Finally, it's important to clarify what your future goals are. So I was speaking to a woman this week who was an administrative assistant for many years, and she was now going to school to become a patient advocate in the healthcare space. And on her profile, she had all this administrative assistant experience. And I didn't know till we got on the phone that she wants to move into healthcare. So the summary section is a great place for her to say, hey, I've developed all of these skills, but I'm passionate about healthcare. And so my future goals are to get a patient advocate position in the healthcare industry and build my network in the healthcare industry. So if your profile isn't totally straightforward, this is a really good place to add some more color and explain your unique situation. It's also a good place to add some keywords. So when a recruiter is searching for people, the ones who have at least 40 words in their summary and have the most relevant words like marketing, business development, if those are the type of people that the recruiter wants to hire, are going to show up higher in the search result. So something to keep in mind when you're drafting this section. So you have your great LinkedIn profile, you feel good about it. Now it's time to go out and build your network on LinkedIn. So we're going to talk about, what your professional network is and how you can add people to it and add value to your network on the platform. The reason this is important is because who you know matters just as much, if not more, as what you know. So we've done some research and found that over half of hires in the workforce result from a personal connection. So people might be sending you job descriptions, maybe they post it online and you see it, maybe someone makes a referral or puts in a good word for you, or maybe you actually get hired by a family member or a friend. I think we've all had examples of basically accessing information or accessing an opportunity because of who we know. But sometimes if we don't have the connections that we need already, we have to be a little bit more deliberate about it. And LinkedIn is a great way to build out your professional network. Now, this is how we think about your network on LinkedIn. Your first degree of people in your network is people who you directly know. So friends, family, former classmates, former colleagues, former bosses. And then around that, there's a ring that's your second degree. So those are the people that your first degree connections know. So you don't know them directly yet, but it would be really easy for you to get connected with a friend of a friend who is hiring for a job that you want to fill. And then your third degree connections is even a layer out of that. And you can actually see these people on LinkedIn. So your friend of a friend's old boss might be hiring on LinkedIn. And if they share that on LinkedIn, it's possible that your friend will see that and then send that to you. So we can consider all of these people part of our network, and it obviously gets exponentially bigger once we consider these outer rings. Now, when you're reaching out to someone you don't know, how do you actually approach that? So let's say this is a friend of a friend situation. So this guy is, my second degree connection. We have someone in common, but I've never met him. But I want to reach out and learn more about his career path. So I send him a LinkedIn invitation with a personal note. And I say, I found your profile through a mutual connection, and name who that mutual connection is so they have an anchor point. And they say that I really admire your experience in your industry, and I'd love to join your network. Personally, I also find it helpful to ask for something specific, which I'll tell you more about in a little bit. I think when you just ask to join someone's network, some people are okay with that on LinkedIn. Some people want to know why, what's in it for me, what's the next step. So I would consider asking for something like an informational interview, but I'm jumping ahead. We'll get to that soon. So how else can you discover existing connections if you're not just clicking around on LinkedIn? One is to go to your My Network page. So you can see this is at the top of the LinkedIn screen once you're logged in. You can look at friends and family. We might pull in current and former colleagues or current and former managers. Now, I want to acknowledge this can seem a little creepy because our algorithms are pretty good. Sometimes we know who's in your network because you've added contacts from your email address book. So you've actually given us permission to take your email address book, and then we're suggesting that you send LinkedIn connection requests to people that you've emailed. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. We might just give some suggestions based on where you went to school or where you work. But that's a great place to start so you can get some ideas of who to connect with if you're having trouble thinking of people. You can also search for new connections. So one of my favorite things to do that I call research rather than LinkedIn stalking is searching for a company or the type of job that I want and just putting it into the people search on LinkedIn. So if I put in, marketing in Google, I would get a whole list of people who are in marketing at Google that I could then reach out to. And if you say you only want to see people in your second degree connections, then you're going to have someone in common with those people. So you already have something that you can call out as a shared point of interest when you reach out. And I'm going to show you a live demo on LinkedIn of how you would actually go about doing this to explore new career paths or new jobs. I showed you an example before about reaching out to someone. So we were reaching out to that guy who knew my friend Rob. So I just want to reiterate that you should always add a note when you're connecting to someone. So especially if you don't know them, you want to clarify why you're reaching out to them and what you're hoping to get out of this connection. It can be, I think, really unsettling for someone to receive a connection request from someone they don't know with no note. It's just like, who is this person? I'm going to reject that request. So where you have the option to add a note when you send a connection request, always choose to do that. So, you can give that person some context. So who should you actually reach out to? I mentioned people you have something in common with. So maybe someone who went to your school or has been through a training program, maybe someone that has a job that is interesting to you, like someone who's in marketing at Google and you really want to do marketing at Google. So you want to reach out to them. Or maybe someone who can help connect you to someone. So let's say there's someone at the Hispanic Heritage Foundation who is used to work in a field that you want to work in, or you're interested in the nonprofit space. Well, you could reach out to, let's say, Jessica and connect with her and send her a note, and maybe she could connect you to someone in the nonprofit space or in her previous lives that would be helpful for your career. And when you're reaching out, you should always say, as I mentioned, who you are, how you found them, and how they can help you. Like, what are you hoping to get out of this? I think that we encourage people to expand their networks, but we also know that people can be really protective of their networks. So they don't want to connect with people if they feel like there's no purpose or they're not going to build a real relationship. So what can you actually do with these connections once you've added them? So the first, let me share this fact actually. So in addition to over half of people using personal connections to get jobs, we find that LinkedIn members are 4 times more likely to get hired at companies where they have a connection. That means that the people they know at those companies are like literally hooking it up for them and referring them to jobs. And so they're getting a leg up. Or maybe you're applying for a marketing job at Google. Maybe you know someone at Google, so you can get inside information when you apply for the job there that helps you stand out in the interview process. So keep this in mind when you're thinking about your dream job. Like, how can you build your network of people who are already in that job or are working at the company? Because quite frankly, then you're more likely to actually land a job. So tactically, what can you do? So Antonio here is prominently featured. We're now connected on LinkedIn, and I can message him now at any time for free. And I can do that from his profile, or I can do it from the messaging page. I have an inbox, and I can just type in his name and reach out to him with any questions or opportunities I have. I could also ask an existing connection for an informational interview. So some of you may have heard of this, some of you have not, but an informational interview is not like a job interview because you're not trying to get a specific job, but it's a way for you to learn more about a career path and build some credibility and build a relationship with the person you're talking to. So this is an example, 2 fake people, but you can totally use this text as an example in your own life. So Kate is reaching out to Erin and saying, I'd love to learn more about your career journey and I admire what you've accomplished. Would you be available for a 20-minute chat? So 20-minute informational interview. And Kate isn't asking Erin for a job. It's important that we don't do that because I think that can come off as a little bit transactional and is awkward for both people. But Kate just wants to learn more so she can get a sense of how Erin got where she is. And honestly, Kate might impress Erin and get a job down the road someday. So even if Erin is not hiring today, maybe the next month she is hiring and she reaches back out to Kate. Or maybe Erin's friend is hiring and then she'll connect Kate to that friend. So this is a way that is sort of low stakes. You're not applying for a job on the spot, but you can access job opportunities just by building a relationship with someone through an informational interview. Now, once you have a relationship with someone, you can straight out ask for a referral. So a job referral is when someone at a company puts in a good word, essentially, formally to the recruiter or hiring manager and says, I'd like to refer someone, in this case, Kate, for a position. And at many companies, referrals are looked at before any other candidates, and they're much more likely to be interviewed and ultimately hired. In fact, at some companies, employees actually get paid if they have referrals that get hired. So everyone's incentivized to make good referrals if there's someone in their network who would be the right fit for a job. So when you're requesting a referral, it's good to explain why you're interested in the role and, show some gratitude and appreciation for this person considering referring you. I will say that, again, we don't want it to feel too transactional, so you probably shouldn't reach out for a referral to someone that you have never met and never talked to. But in this case, Kate's probably either worked with Seth in the past, or maybe Kate had an informational interview at Seth, and so they've established a relationship, and now she's ready to ask for a formal referral and get hooked up to a job. Finally, I mentioned a little bit earlier that you can add recommendations to your profile. So this is like if you're applying for school or you're applying for a job, you might need a recommendation or reference. This is basically the same thing. It's a little shorter. It's like a little paragraph, and it lives on your LinkedIn profile for anyone to see. So on someone else's profile, you can click ask this person to recommend me, and that sends them a request. And then they can say, I used to work with Bari. She's amazing, and she'd be a great fit for any type of job. So you can do that with current or former managers. You can do that with current or former classmates or colleagues, or maybe anyone you've met through nonprofit or volunteering experiences. When we think about our networks, I think the most important thing to consider is how you can add value to your network over time. I don't think it's going to be very valuable to you if you spend an hour this week adding people on LinkedIn and then you go dark for 5 years and they never hear from you. It's important that you invest time in your connections and build relationships by requesting informational interviews or liking things that they share or commenting things and starting conversations on the LinkedIn feed. It's also valuable to give recommendations to other people. So if you worked with someone on a project or you have a former colleague that you've been thinking about, you don't even need to ask them for a recommendation first. You can actually go write a recommendation for them, and they'll probably feel like they want to give you one back. But having a mindset of giving help makes it more likely that you're going to be able to get help when you need it most. So finally, you have your network, you have an amazing LinkedIn profile, you're ready to search and apply for jobs. Here are a few tools that you can keep in your back pocket if you're not looking for a job, or if you are, start using today. The first thing I want to call out is the career interest section. So when you're on LinkedIn at the top, you can click jobs, and then you can set your specific career interests. You can tell recruiters that you're open to jobs. So this won't show up to anyone except recruiters at other companies. So don't worry about your current boss seeing it, for example. It's really just recruiters at other companies can say that you're open to other jobs. And so if they reach out, you might be willing to respond. And then you can say what types of jobs you're looking for and locations. So if you're interested in, relocating to Los Angeles, so you actually only want jobs in LA, even though you're living in New York, then you can say that. And if you're only open to jobs that are marketing manager, you don't want to be a marketing coordinator because you've been a marketing coordinator for 5 years or 10 years and you're ready for the next step, you can say that too. And then when recruiters are searching for you, they'll see exactly what you're open to. You can also just start searching for jobs. So on the search bar, you can just type in any type of job you're interested in and then click on jobs so that you're only getting jobs results. And you can search by keyword, company, location. I recommend keeping it an open mind and looking at as many as possible. And the more jobs that you look at on LinkedIn, the better LinkedIn's recommendations will be. And you can actually get an email every day with new jobs that are similar to the ones you've looked at in the past. So you don't necessarily have to be, going onto LinkedIn every day. LinkedIn will come to you on your app or through your email. So those are called search alerts. And you can set up a search alert based on any type of keyword, industry, the date that it's posted, for instance. So my real life example, actually, New York to LA, that's something that my family is thinking about doing soon. So I'm not ready to apply for a new job yet, but I am curious about what's in LA right now in my field. So I set a search alert for opportunities in Los Angeles. And then I get an email every day that just lists them. And, it's just for my knowledge. I'm not applying to any jobs right now, but it's helpful for me to have a sense of the job market and what's being posted on LinkedIn. So I think this is a really interesting tool that just makes it a little easier for you. What these job recommendations are called are jobs you may be interested in. So when you go to jobs, there's going to be a section that is called jobs you may be interested in. And we're going to make those recommendations based on what you've looked at in the past, but also what's on your profile. So if you're seeing jobs that are just not really a good fit, maybe think about whether the keywords and the skills you have on your profile are the right ones. So for example, if you are looking for a job in engineering, but you only have a marketing background, LinkedIn might only be giving you marketing jobs. Well, maybe you need to put on your profile that you're interested in engineering jobs and you're taking a course online, and these are all the specific skills, because our algorithms are matching based on keywords. So if we don't see the keywords on your profile that relate to engineering, we're only going to send you the jobs that are no longer relevant because they're based on your past experience. Finally, if you're passionate about specific companies, you can follow those companies. And then the recruiters will see you follow them, which is a great look. It'll show you're already interested in the company. And you'll be able to see whenever they post new jobs, it'll show up for you on LinkedIn. So if you were really interested in Starbucks, you could look them up, click follow. You can also read more about what they're posting and what it's like to work there. And if you're interviewing for a company, this is a great way to get little tidbits. Like, I saw you posted about this awesome workshop employees attended last week. Is that something that's available to all employees? Or this is why I want to work at Starbucks. I saw that everyone gets education credits for free if they work there. And I saw this great story on your LinkedIn page about a Starbucks partner that got to graduate from ASU. Like, those are really cool tidbits that'll make you stand out when you're talking to a recruiter. And it makes it clear that you want a job at Starbucks, not just any company. Now, when you find a job you're actually into, you can apply on LinkedIn. Sometimes you'll see a button called Easy Apply. And with Easy Apply, you don't even have to send your resume. It's literally one click, and then your LinkedIn profile will go to the recruiter and they can just review your LinkedIn profile. So that's a bunch on jobs. Finally, I'd love to share some extra credit, which are just some additional features and guidance you can use depending on where you're at in your career. So we'll talk about schools, we'll talk about groups, and finally, I have some additional resources for you all. And again, these slides will be sent out after our session today, so you can click on the resources and review everything in here when you have some more time to digest. Now, if there are schools you've attended, you can look them up on LinkedIn. It's almost guaranteed that they'll have a LinkedIn page. And you can either follow them if you want to continue getting news about that school, or you can look at their alumni. So if you go to the alumni tab on a school page, you can see where people tend to work, where they live, what they're doing now, and what they studied, which is really cool. So this can also be helpful if you're considering programs in the future, like a grad program. Now, you can't break it down by program. Like, I don't know what someone with an MBA from San Jose State is doing, but I can see in general that San Jose State graduates are working in the Bay Area. They're working at tech companies like Cisco and Apple, and maybe those are places I want to work. And so it's a good sign that this program could be a good fit for me. And you can't see this here, but when you scroll down on the page, you can see specific alumni and you can reach out to them. And I mentioned that it's easier to reach out to people when you have something or someone in common. So if there's someone who went to your school, it's much more likely that they're going to feel excited and enthusiastic about responding, rather than reaching out to someone who has nothing in common with you. I think it's harder to build a foundation there. Another way to find people in common with you is by joining groups. So there's actually a group for leaders on Fast Track, and you can join that group. You can search for it, request to join. All groups need to approve you if you're going to join the group. So it shouldn't take too long for you to be approved. And then you can see all the members in the group. One thing that's cool is that normally on LinkedIn, you have to be connected to someone to message them for free, unless you have premium, and then you have typically 5 free messages a month. However, you can message 15 people in your group for free per month. So if you are interested in networking with this community, or you're interested in networking with engineers in New York, maybe you can search for an NYC engineers group, join that, and then message people who are interesting to you and say, hey, I found you in this group and I'm really inspired by your career path. I'd love to learn more. So think creatively about the types of groups you might want to join. I'll also say that while I'm not a part of this group, it's private to me. I can't see what's inside. There are a lot of groups that have content too. So people can post jobs that they're finding. They could post interesting articles. It's like joining a Facebook group, really, where there, is really a ton of possibilities around what you can get from it, depending on how active you are and who you connect with. Finally, I want to acknowledge privacy settings because this is a question I often get. Basically, everything you share on LinkedIn is up to you in terms of who can see it or who you want to see it. So to update your settings when you are logged into LinkedIn, you want to click on your face in the upper right-hand corner, and then you can go to settings and privacy. And you can update your language, you can change your password, update your notifications so you don't get too many emails from LinkedIn. And you can also change who can see your profile. So there are some people who say, I don't want anyone that isn't in my network to see my profile. Some people say, I want to be totally Googleable and anyone can see my profile. So you can make that personal decision and then decide. Some people also hide their photo. So you have to be connected to them to see their photo. So that's another way to go about the photo decision. Just want you to be aware that these settings are here. And finally, some more additional resources. And some of these are specific to the challenging times that we're currently in. One is a site called opportunity.linkedin.com. And this is a comprehensive resource for job seekers. So you're going to see tips on how to build a profile, some LinkedIn learning courses, which is our online learning platform that you might want to take. And this is just something to keep an eye on as a resource page moving forward. We also have some resources that are particularly for interview prep. So when you go to the job section on LinkedIn, there is an area for interview prep that'll tell you questions you might want to prepare for. And the coolest thing is that we're now using artificial intelligence to help people improve their answers. So you can go on and record a video of yourself answering an interview question. And then our artificial intelligence, which we actually got from Microsoft, so that's a benefit of being bought by them, will look at how many filler words I'm using, like how many ums or likes, which I'm definitely saying a lot of today, and say, was your answer the right length, or was it too short or too long? You should maybe use a different tone to convey the right emotion. So it's a great opportunity. You can even send your answers to other people. So if you have a mentor or someone who's helping out with your job search, you can record the video and then share it with a connection on LinkedIn. So I highly recommend the interview prep tools if you're going through a job search process. There's also a resource for job seekers called Get Hired, which is a newsletter produced by our LinkedIn news team. And this comes out a couple times a week, and the content is always great. So we have a team of journalists who are doing reporting to find out, what jobs are in high demand right now, what companies are still hiring, how you should talk about a gap on your resume. If you're unemployed, how to manage your finances during this time as you look for a new opportunity. There's really a ton of different topics they're covering, and it's a newsletter, so you can subscribe and get an email every time there's a new one. So I encourage you to follow that link to subscribe on LinkedIn. And finally, there's over 275 courses that have been unlocked on our online learning platform. So usually on LinkedIn Learning, you have to pay to get access, or you get it through your company if your company is paying for access for you. But given the challenges that so many people are going through right now, we've unlocked hundreds of these courses. So you can review particularly in-demand skills or cover content like How do you work from home? How do you lead a team remotely? How do you find a job during challenging economic times? That's the name of a course that I think is particularly relevant. So if you click on the link on this slide, you'll get to a list of all of these courses, and you can start exploring without having to worry about paying for extra access. So I'll now wrap up with the slides. I have one more thing to show you. I just want to give a live demo. So let me switch my screen to LinkedIn. So this is my LinkedIn homepage when I log in. And I just want to give a specific example of what the search looks like. So again, if I know that I want to do marketing at a tech company like Google, I know I keep using that example. Hopefully someone here wants to do marketing at Google. I can just search marketing Google, and I could look at jobs. So now there are all these jobs at Google I can look at, but I can also look at people. So who are the people doing marketing at Google that I might be interested in? Now, I only want my second degree connections because I want to have someone in common with them. So let's see this person, Lauren. We actually have a lot of connections. So Lauren and I are connected to 4 people. Awesome. So I can drop a name when I reach out to her. And Lauren and I aren't already connected. So what I want to do is connect with her, but send a note so it's not totally out of the blue. So I would say something to Lauren like, I saw that we're both connected to Madeline. How do you know her? We used to work together. I'm really inspired by your experience at Google, and I'd love to know more about how you got there. Would you be open to a 20-minute call? So that's how it works with someone you don't know if you're trying to be a little bit more proactive on LinkedIn. And I think after our conversation today, you can potentially set specific goals. Like this week, my goal is to improve my profile on LinkedIn. Next week, my goal is to reach out to 3 different people I don't know on LinkedIn. The following week, my goal is to set up job search alerts on LinkedIn, or start looking for, let's say, 10 jobs that I want on LinkedIn and seeing what the keywords are on those jobs, so I know what my profile needs to look like if I want to get those opportunities. So you can think of these as, basically homework if you're up for it and you want to make LinkedIn work for you. And I would encourage you to, let's go back to PowerPoint. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Google LinkedIn Coaches, where you can find a ton of resources like handouts, and review this deck that we're going to send out after today so that you can learn more about how to find opportunity through LinkedIn. And I have just talked a lot, so I will pause and hear from you about how I can help further and what specifics have come up for you.
Thank you so much, Bari, and thank you so much for your wonderful presentation and walking us through how to, successfully leverage LinkedIn, from building a profile, making sure we add a summary with keywords and growing our network, doing LinkedIn research, as you said, and also encouraging folks to simply reach out and ask for informal interviews and, grow their network. So up next, we have our Q&A session. We will be answering questions that are under the Q&A window. So for those of you who have been asking the questions under the comment section, I ask you to please submit them under the Q&A window so that we can capture them and try to answer as many as possible live. So the first question we have here, Bari, is does LinkedIn have a way to measure how many jobs are actually filled from a LinkedIn application? This participant says that she's heard that recruiters and career coaches that applying on LinkedIn is not a very effective. And can you comment on that specifically for the tech industry?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that we look at as a company is confirmed hires. Excuse me. So someone is a confirmed hire if they looked at a job posting or interacted with the company on LinkedIn, and then we see that they actually got the job and it was added to their LinkedIn profile within a few months time frame. So we can look at that to understand what happens when someone applies for a job or interacts with the company on LinkedIn. Obviously, it's not a foolproof method. Like you can apply for a job or on LinkedIn, but then, the recruiter doesn't really see it until you get a friend to hook you up with the recruiter. So I don't want to say that LinkedIn is always enough. In fact, I think sometimes when I've personally been hiring, I've gotten so many candidates on LinkedIn that it takes a really long time to get through them. And if someone sort of rises above the pack somehow, it can make a big difference. So that's why I would recommend when you are interested in a job, apply for it on LinkedIn, but also send a note to someone who works there or someone who's maybe even on the specific team and say, I'm interested in learning more about this job. Don't say, I applied for this job. Can you please bug the hiring manager and put my resume on the top of the pile? Like, again, that just might feel a little transactional if you don't know someone. But if it's more about how can I learn about this role, or you even know who the recruiter is, and you can send a message to the recruiter on LinkedIn, then you can make it work for you because they'll go into LinkedIn and look you up because, now your name is in front of them. You're not just one of thousands of people. So I think apply for jobs on LinkedIn, but try to go above and beyond if you can. So you're not just one of the many other people who are applying on LinkedIn too.
Wonderful. And the next question we have here is from Henry. He asks, I subscribe to LinkedIn Job Alert and wonder if there's a way to filter out the new jobs which are not really new to me.
Great question. So I definitely see those too, Henry. One thing I would do is check your job alert settings and make sure that they're as specific as they can be. So if you're saying something like marketing, that's so vague, right? And you're going to get a lot of junk in there. But if you know specifically you want to do digital marketing and you want to be working with social media, add those keywords. That's the best way to filter out some of that information. The other thing is that we know when you click on the jobs. So click on the jobs you like from the emails, don't click on the ones you don't like, and it'll train our algorithms to be more responsive and start sending you more relevant jobs that are like the ones you've already clicked on, ideally.
Great, thank you. And then we have another question as well. It says, for the summary section, is it best to use first person or third person? Does this change as you grow in your career?
Yeah, great question. I've seen it both ways, and I think it's totally personal preference. So my personal preference is first person, just because I don't know, like I'm typing it, so I feel like it should just come from me. But I know a lot of people, including very senior and experienced people, who use third person. So totally up to you. If you are doing a lot of speaking engagements, you're probably sending out bios, and those have third person. So maybe that's what you're most comfortable with. But if it feels more authentic and natural and casual to do first person, you can do that too. I've never heard someone say they hate one way or the other. It's really just a slight personal preference.
Thank you. And then a question from Frida we have, I'm changing careers and I'm over 30, having a hard time finding an entry-level job. Do you have any advice?
Great question, Frida. So this comes up a lot when people are changing industries, especially when they want to show that they're going to be relevant to that new industry. I would say this is a great time to use your network. So it might be hard for you to stand out if you're competing with a lot of other, let's say, recent college grads. We're also looking for entry-level roles right now, and you could be applying for jobs that there's a ton of interest in. But if you can find some personal connections to jobs or to companies, then you'll be able to stand out. So if you are changing industries and you know people in that new industry, maybe reach out to them and say like, hey, we haven't spoken in a while. Hope you're doing well. And just wanted to let you know, I'm actually looking for jobs in tech now. I'd love to catch up or maybe just, learn more about what you're doing and about your company. Or maybe you don't want to have a conversation with them, but you can just say, I'd love to know if any jobs come across your desk. Please keep me in mind. So it's just like a FYI, I want to be in your industry now. If you don't know anyone in your industry, that's when you can do that people searching, and you can find someone you don't know, but maybe know through a friend or went to your school, and see if you can make some new connections in your industry. I think some job changes are harder than others. And when you're dealing with something like changing your career, it can be helpful to build personal relationships and find opportunities that way, because recruiters might not, be able to pick you out if they're getting thousands of applications for other entry-level jobs.
Thank you for that advice, Bari. And the next one we have here is from Joel. He writes, having a paid profile versus a free account make a difference when doing a job hunting?
Yes and no. So there's a few benefits to the paid account, which, by the way, you can get for 30 days for free. So you could try it out, but just some advice is to put on your calendar the day that it will charge you, because a lot of people accidentally then get charged after their free trial, and it can be hard to get the refund. So be mindful of that if you sign up for the free trial. What the job seeker premium account that's paid does for you is when you apply for a job, you show up on the top of the applicant list as premium. So a recruiter might be more likely to see you when you apply for a job. You also get 5 free email messages, which are the messages that you can send to people who aren't in your network. So, if you don't want to just send connection requests to people that you don't know, you want to send messages, but you're not connected to them, then it'll be helpful to have those free messages, 5 per month. And the other thing that you can see on a job post, if you have a paid account, is some extra insights, like how many other people have applied for this job and how do you rank up compared to them? What skills are required for this job, and how many skills do you have compared to other people who are applying? What skills do you need? And finally, you get access to LinkedIn Learning. So my typical recommendation for the premium account is that it's not that necessary. I think it's $30 a month, which for some people is a big expense. And so I would say you can do a lot on LinkedIn without it. But if $30 a month is reasonable for you and you're interested in exploring it and seeing the value you get out of it, you can certainly try. They want to make it a better experience for job seekers. But you certainly don't need it. And people get jobs all the time without having a paid account. So don't feel like it's a must.
Wonderful. And we also have a question here is, what is the etiquette on when it is best to connect via LinkedIn? Is it okay to connect right after a job interview?
Great question. I like the idea of connecting after a job interview, but I would probably write a thank you note there. So I would say, as I said, you can add a note when you request someone. I would say, thanks so much for taking the time to chat today. I'm really excited about the role. So maybe send your thank you email after the job interview and also send the LinkedIn request around the same time. I think it's good to have that note of gratitude in there if you're going to add them to your network.
Great. And then another question we have here is, as a job seeker, how valuable is a LinkedIn SSI social selling index to monitor your personal brand and profile within the platform? If it is not that valuable, what is another index where I can monitor my personal brand strength?
Sure. So Enrique is referring to something called a social selling index, which is something that salespeople use on our Sales Navigator platform, which is a special product for salespeople. And your social selling index looks at basically how strong your network is and how built out your profile is, because we believe that, the stronger your network, the better your profile, the more likely is you're going to be able to sell to people on LinkedIn. So Enrique, it's definitely a good measure. I think that's a great connection to make if you have access to the social selling index. The other thing people will look at on their profile is I think it's called the profile strength score. So it'll say you have an all-star profile, or you're not quite there, but your profile is looking good. And that'll get higher and higher the more you fill out on your profile. I do want to say that it never gets to 100%. So some people get very angry that they don't get 100% of the bar, but it's not possible because we always want to encourage you to add more to your profile. But that's something you can look at too, to see what more you can add if you don't have access to the social selling index.
Wonderful. And we have another question here. Do you have any tips for graduate students, such as doctoral students, who have spent most of their time building their education rather than building work skills?
Great call. So I think that going through an educational experience obviously yields a ton of skills and probably has built your network a fair amount. So on LinkedIn, you can include stuff in your education section, but there's also a project section and of course the experience section. So my recommendation is that you think about all of the projects that you've worked on, or internships you've done, or jobs you've had during your educational career, and you add those. And you can add the projects either to the experience section or to the project section. So if you just did a project for a class that was we had to do an analysis and submit it in a PowerPoint, you could put that in your project section and add some keywords, add the people that you collaborated with. If you did a project that was also like a consultation for a local business or a local organization, you could add that in the experience section. I think that's basically the same as paid work experience, except you didn't get a paycheck most likely. So I would add that there. And then think about connecting with your classmates, connecting with any professors or grad students, trying to build your network based on everyone you've connected with throughout your educational career, because there's definitely a lot there, even though I find that during school, people are less active on LinkedIn. And finally, if you have any publications, depending on what you've been studying, you can add those under publications. And just make it clear in your summary section what you're looking for now. So if you want to stay in academia, then it's going to be confusing when people look at your profile and you say that you want jobs in XYZ, or vice versa. If you're only putting your school down, but you actually want to get a job in tech, people aren't going to be totally clear that you're looking to move to industry. So that's a great place to build out the summary and clarifying your headline, what you're looking for moving forward.
Wonderful. And we have another question here is, how much weight do the recommendations carry? Do LinkedIn recruiters look at them?
Yeah, I think recruiters look at them. I don't know, and I can only speak to my own experience as a hiring manager. I don't know that they're going to replace references, right? I'm still, when I hire someone, going to call a reference. And they might encourage me to talk to someone, but if I still don't have a good experience with someone, I am not going to hire them because of the recommendation I saw in their profile. So I would say that if there's consistent recommendations with consistent themes on someone's profile, I'm reading again and again that this person, brings humor and great communication skills and great energy to their work, I'm going to be more excited about talking to them. But again, if they don't have any of the skills, or the references I talk to actually say the opposite, I'm not going to hire them. So I think they're not make or break, but they can be helpful when you're just looking to get in the door and have some initial conversations.
Wonderful. And the question from Catalina we have here, how recent should the content on LinkedIn be?
I think it depends on how much content you have. So if you've been in the workforce for 30 years and you've had a lot of different jobs, and some of them are totally irrelevant to what you want to do today, you don't need to add it. Like, we don't need to know what, you did in 1985 if it has nothing to do with your current focus. However, if you have work that's all relevant to what you're currently doing and you want to show how deep your experience is, it's totally fine to include it. I recently took off like an internship I did over 10 years ago. It was in the criminal justice system, and I thought that's the space I wanted to be in, but I'm no longer looking for opportunities in criminal justice. So I just took it off so it's easier for people to read my profile, and it no longer feels relevant. But if I'm applying for a job in the future in that space, maybe I'll add it back. So that's what's nice about LinkedIn, that you can remove some of the older stuff that doesn't feel relevant, but if you change your mind, you can always add it back in. I think make it as relevant as possible to your personal goals. That's the best way to approach it.
Great. And we have another question here. How true is a 10% top applicant feature? I have been a top applicant for several roles, but I don't get any interviews. What am I doing wrong?
Good question. So the top applicant feature is something I mentioned before, that people can see if they've used the paid account. And so it tells you that you're a top applicant, meaning that you, based on your LinkedIn profile, have more skills, or we think you're more likely to be qualified for a role. That being said, there could be a lot of top applicants. So in roles that I've hired for, I've had thousands of applicants come through LinkedIn. So the top 10% could still be 500 people. And, I don't necessarily want to discourage you. I think it still means you're more qualified than others, but there are recruiters who don't do a good job of going through all their candidates and following up with everyone. So, I think that you're not necessarily doing anything wrong, but you're applying for jobs where there's a ton of interest. And it could help to send a note to the recruiter or a note to someone on the team. Or you could be working with a recruiter or a situation where they're just not really great at following up and getting back to all of their candidates with feedback. And unfortunately, that's something that happens in the recruiting space that we see all the time. So I wouldn't weight the top applicant piece too heavily. If you're a good fit for the job, right? Like, you can see the skills they want, you can see the skills that you have in your own experience. I wouldn't rely too heavily on top applicants because we just have no idea necessarily how big the pool is and how many applicants they're getting even off of LinkedIn, right? So they're dealing with a deluge of applicants, and sometimes we're just not going to hear back, which is why I think you're more likely to get jobs through your network a lot of the time.
Wonderful. And the last question we have here, as for the summary section, is it advisable to be very specific regarding the type of position you want? I'm looking into starting my career either in marketing or business management, and I'm not sure how should I approach it.
Yeah, I think if you are just starting your career or you're a little undecided, I think it's fine to include both. So I would say I'm exploring opportunities in marketing and business management, because I mentioned keywords are key. I guess that makes sense. That's why they're called keywords. So I should say keywords are king on LinkedIn. So you want to have as many words as possible that are relevant to the job. So if you would take a job in marketing or in business, then you should say marketing and business, and recruiters will see both on your profile and you're more likely to pop up for them. And I think they understand if you're a student, that you're still exploring and it's okay that you don't have a really narrow path. And so I would encourage you to cast a wide net and not get too specific on your LinkedIn profile the way sometimes you have to get on a resume.
Thank you so much, Bari, for all the wonderful tips and all your insightful answers. This concludes the first workshop of the LOFT series. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. And of course, another special thanks to you, Bari. And tomorrow we will be having another workshop series, and it'll focus on resume and interview prep. It is at the same time at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So we hope you can all join us. Thank you all so much and see you tomorrow.